we'll get to it. The plan for today is that we'll start with a presentation of the key data from our parental engagement report, which we launched a few weeks ago. Then we'll spend some time discussing the data and give you an opportunity to reflect on your personal context within what you saw in the data that we present. Then I'll take us through making parental feedback more strategic in your organization. How can you make the most out of parental feedback? And then finishing up the session with a look forward, discussing where is parental engagement needed most and what we can do in our organizations to get us there. And first question of the session, are you a parent or carer? Quick yes or no. Okay. All right, great. Thank you everyone for answering. I asked this question because, you know, for some of us, for some of you, you may be representing both roles as you go through and think about parental engagement. The person working in the sector and the parent having a child in education at the moment. But for those who are not parents, think about the other ways that you can connect with the stakeholder group. Remembering your own childhood experiences as a child, how your parents participated in your education, looking at how your friends and colleagues experience parental engagement, so that we kind of think about the duality of this, that, you know, we're working in the sector with parents, we want to get them engaged. How can we kind of turn on that empathy in this relationship to think about how we can make this a strong relationship between the parent and the school? And I will just preface with the fact that I will use the word parent throughout this presentation, but we do mean parents, carers, families, in any way that you interact with them and how they come to school. Yeah, so with that in mind, as we look through the key takeaways from the parental engagement report, do think about both what this means for you in the sector and what this means for parents. What are they experiencing in your organizations that would make them respond in the way that they are? And the first thing that we look at when we think about our surveys at Edurio is this key question: how satisfied are parents with their school's efforts to engage them as a parent? And this key question takes into account kind of the overall experience of the parent and the various questions that we do ask in our surveys, because our surveys cover both elements of parental involvement, kind of the by definition, the physical interaction of the parent with the school, coming to events, coming to parents' evenings, and so forth, with parental engagement, which is how parents feel about their learning, how they support their child's learning at home. And when we take a step back and look at just their overall satisfaction with this interaction with the school, we see that 58% of parents feel completely or quite satisfied with the school's efforts to engage them. So just over half feeling satisfied about this, 21% feeling only slightly satisfied or not satisfied at all. And then when we go kind of a bit further and think about what does it mean to be satisfied, how does this relationship get facilitated, we think about how respected do parents feel. And here we see an overwhelming majority that parents are feeling respected, quite or completely respected by the school, which I think is a good, very good indicator for you, something you can be very proud of, that this relationship does have a basis of respect. And then, of course, communication is a key element of engagement. Parents need to know what are the channels of communication with the school. The school needs to keep these channels of communication open. And as parents are many times on kind of the outside looking in, by taking into account this communication question, we can kind of see what is it indicating about the quality of the parent-school relationship. And here, 55% of parents feeling completely or quite satisfied with the school's communication, 24%, almost a quarter, feeling only slightly satisfied or not satisfied at all. Of course, parents want to know how their child is doing, one of the key elements of parental engagement. What is happening with their child while their child is at school? So here we ask parents how informed they feel about various elements, from attendance, punctuality, behavior, learning progress, homework, and how their child is doing socially. And here we see an interesting difference in these categories that we ask about. From parents overall, 87% of parents feeling fully or quite informed about their child's attendance. So there are elements where parents feel very informed. But as you can see, there are also elements where parents feel less informed about how their child is doing. Only 41% of parents feeling fully or quite informed about how their child is doing socially. And this kind of asks the question about how and what do schools do to, first of all, track these things. One would say that attendance is kind of like an easier thing to inform a parent about. The child is either in school or not. But what kind of systems do we put into place to monitor ourselves how a child is doing socially, and then still how do we inform parents about their child's social development? And another interesting aspect that came through in our research from the last year's data is this difference between primary and secondary phase parent respondents. And this is something that we see overall through most of our questions and over time as well, a consistent difference in the satisfaction of parents in primary and satisfaction of parents in secondary. So here, 68% of parents with a child in primary and only 51% of parents with a child in secondary feel satisfied with their school's efforts to engage them. And what I want to say is that, yes, we understand that parental engagement changes as a child ages, as a child goes through their schooling. We want a child to become more independent, to become more self-driven. But the question and the way that it's formulated here, how satisfied are you with the school's efforts to engage them, is saying that parents with a child in secondary are less satisfied with their school's efforts to engage them. It is lower. So what can be done to improve this satisfaction with parents with a child in secondary and this in their engagement? And here's an example of how that trend plays out between primary and secondary. So going back to the question about how informed parents feel, in those elements where parents overall feel very informed or quite informed about their child, like attendance, the difference between primary and secondary responses is quite small. But when we go to the elements like homework and how the child is doing socially, we see that the difference between primary and secondary parents, how they feel informed, is much larger. So 16% difference in primary and secondary parents feeling informed about homework, and 26% difference about how their child is doing socially. So once again, thinking about the systems that we have in place, how we communicate this information to parents about their child. And the final section that I'll cover is about the biggest changes that we saw in our data. We've been running the parental engagement survey for about 4 years now, and we have a nice look back on what we see and what trends are happening in our data sets. And the three questions that I'll show and the biggest changes that we have noticed in the past academic year are all around communication. So the biggest change, 6% decrease in the ease of contacting the school. How easy or difficult is it to contact the school if you need to? Now dropping to 75%, which, you know, on a whole is a positive number, but we're seeing that decrease in this question. 5% decrease in the ease of discussing the child's progress and other issues with the school if needed. That's going down to 59% in the past academic year. And finally, how confident parents feel to discuss complex issues openly with the school, a drop in 4% to 62% of parents feeling confident discussing complex issues with the school. And as you can see, all of these three changes are connected with communication, which may imply that the 55% of parents that I presented in the beginning that are satisfied with communication, that figure may not be as stable as it seems if some of these elements around communication are showing a consistent decrease across the board. So with that, I will ask Danny to put up the next poll. And this will help us guide the discussion. Now that we've seen some of the data that we've been working on in our report, which topic are you most interested in discussing? Would you like to have the conversation around general satisfaction, informing parents about their child, these primary and secondary differences, or some of the biggest changes that we saw in our data?
Really sorry, Amanda, it's not letting me launch the poll. Sorry, might just have to be a quick one in the chat if that's okay. So yeah, sorry about that. So the poll, the question is, which topic are you most interested in discussing? The options are general satisfaction with schools' efforts to engage parents, respect and communication. Option 2 is informing parents about their child. 3 is the primary secondary differences, and number 4 is the biggest changes, the ease of contacting the school. So yeah, if you could put your options there. Sorry about that.
No worries. And Iona, I'll let you kind of take a look at what people are writing and
Yeah, so it looks like we've got an early lead in general satisfaction. We've got 1 vote for informing parents. We might be able to cover a couple of topics anyway, but
so,
so I think we're probably going to conclude that general satisfaction with the school's efforts is the number 1 topic to talk about.
Oh, there it goes.
The poll has arrived.
All right, I did it now.
So yeah, I think we can switch to the discussion now. Danny, as we want this to be a kind of free and open discussion, I think we'll pause the recording at this point. Before we do, just while we do, let's I'd love if anyone has any other takeaways from this discussion in particular, but from the session overall, please do share them in the chat. And one other thing to note is when we send out the recording in the next couple of days, I think there's been lots of lovely stuff here around people who've got a problem over here, people who've got an idea over here. If there's anyone on the line today that would like us to kind of help put you in touch with others, please do, and perhaps we can sort of share email addresses with people who are keen to kind of talk more. With that, I will pass back to Amanda to finish the session.
All right, thanks. So in this next section, we'll start thinking about how we can use feedback in a more strategic way, how we can make the most out of parent feedback. And to do that, we're going to use the Adurio strategic feedback cycle, which we believe that if you go through the steps and you take the time to plan and really analyze your results, you'll be able to bring feedback into your school improvement journey in a more meaningful, impactful way. The steps that we'll cover now are setting goals, carrying out the survey, analyzing results and taking action, followed by the iteration of the cycle, reviewing and continuing. And why this is so important is because when we ask parents how often do they see their feedback to the school having an impact, it's an interesting perspective. 36% of parents seeing their feedback to the school has an impact always or most of the time. Almost the same amount of parents, 35%, saying rarely or never. And we ask this question to staff members in a similar format. They have a similar response, and we also ask a similar question to pupils about pupil voice being taken into account in their schools, and they also have a similar take on this question. So this does beg for the idea that we think about feedback more strategically, so that we think about ways of feeding it back to our respondents, to our stakeholders, so that they trust the process, that giving feedback is important, and that they know that schools will do something with it. So to help us to help understand this, I'll try to break down the question and what are the elements of it. How often do you see that your feedback to the school has an impact? This implies that parents give feedback to the school. So we are either asking them to give feedback to us, or they just give it to us in the form of maybe a complaint, an email, or a phone call or something. And what we see in comments around this question from parents is that they categorize this feedback in two different ways. In a school level, so giving feedback about policies, maybe some sort of implementations, events, and that kind of thing, and on their child's level, making sure that the feedback that they give about maybe an issue that happened with their child is taken into account, that things are resolved for their child, and so forth. So the first element of this is that parents give some sort of feedback to the school. The second one is this to the school part. And this implies that the school does something with this feedback. And many times this is a black box for parents. They're on the outside looking in. They hope that something is done in the school with their feedback, but they may not always know what that is. And so this is the part where it's important that we have systems in place to help organize the feedback that is received, that there is a system in place to make sure that people are getting the responses and follow-ups that they need to make sure that this process is going on. And finally, the last part of this question is the impact part. And how can you as schools and organizations show parents the changes, the results, the impact connected to their feedback that they gave initially? So this is a pretty tough part of the chain to remember to do. It's one thing to collect feedback. It's another thing to do something with it. It's yet another step to actually feed that back to parents through your stakeholders that, yes, look at what we've did. Look at what we've done with the information that you've given us. So now I'll take us through the steps and we'll see what can we think about when we're going through the cycle to be more strategic about the feedback that we collect. The first part is setting a goal. So having a clear goal of what you want parents to give feedback about and why. Why is this information important to you now? Why are you ready to dedicate your time, your energy into going into the feedback that parents are about to give? And what is it that you want to find out? Is it just a kind of overview? How are parents feeling about engagement? Or is there a more specific topic that you're keen on understanding better and you need to ask more specific, concentrated questions to parents? So what is the goal? Why are we doing this? And that follows up with the next step, which is carrying out the survey. And this has 3 phases within it. Making sure you're planning for the survey, that you design a survey that is, with the questions that you need, the responses that are appropriate, and then you're running the survey in a successful way, getting the response rate up. And here it's really important to make the preparations, get the team on board, communicate within your organization that this is going to happen, get everyone listening to the goal, understanding the goal, on board that yes, this is a goal that we all want to work towards. Setting a timeline, making sure that you're not just setting a timeline for when you're going to run the actual survey, but that you are putting in the time after the survey is complete to analyze the results, to feed back the information, to dedicate time for action to take place. And that you're communicating early and loudly that you want parental feedback. I think a lot of times, especially if in the past you've seen low response rates about surveys, that means there's maybe a lack of trust in the survey process. Parents or other stakeholders might feel a little bit jaded, that they haven't seen the results, the impact about their feedback coming back to them. So they don't know if it's worth it to take the time to fill out the survey. So again, communicating early and loudly that you want the parental feedback, and a bonus if you tell them what you plan to do with it. And that makes you more accountable to what you will do after you get their responses. Then once the survey is closed, you've gotten the information from your stakeholders, you're ready to analyze the results. And the first thing is, of course, to just go through what the respondents have said, where the strong areas, where the areas of improvement that you see in the results. Are there any surprising results? But this whole time, you're kind of filling in the context of your organization. What's going on the ground? Someone mentioned that there might be leadership changes going on. How is that impacting the way that respondents feel in this moment? What's the demographic? What are you, what's going on in your organization? What's the context? And the whole time that you're in this analyzing results stage, you have to remember the goal, why you asked for this feedback, and remember your plan, what you want to do with the feedback going forward. Did you get the answers that you had questions about in the goal? Do you have the information you need to make the next steps that you want to? And from that, you can kind of make the conclusions around the data to know, okay, this is what we have to do next. And then we're into the taking action step. And the first part of that is to communicate. At the very least, we say thank you to the respondents, to the parents for taking the time out of their busy schedules to fill out the survey. The next step would be to summarize the strengths and areas of improvements for them, to show them once again, these were the questions that we asked. This is what you as a parent population said. And doing that in a humble way, that we now see where our strengths and our weaknesses are. We can work on them together. But I encourage you to think further. What we heard in some of your comments about getting those friendly parents, those eager parents, the parents that are the bridge between you as an organization and the parent population, inviting them to discuss the summarized results, to problem solve together, getting them to feel their role and their responsibility in this parent-school partnership, that it becomes a true partnership based on trust and collaboration, that we can move forward with a common language. And I think that's also, something that came up in your comments, that this common language sometimes is missing. And if we kind of take the time to make those common definitions for us, for our organization, for the parents that we're working with, we can maybe make more proactive steps going forward. And then together we are making the priorities. Which priorities do we have solutions for? Which don't we have solutions for? We have to make priorities, because saying yes to one thing means saying no to another. We can't do it all. So looking for those high impact solutions, looking for some quick wins to help parents see pretty soon after a survey that yes, their feedback is taken into account. We are seeing our feedback meaning something for the organization. And an easy way to do that is by using the "you said, we did" strategy, putting together what parents said from the survey, and right next to it, what you as an organization did about it. And that's a very clear visual way for people to see, okay, I remember answering that question in the survey. Oh, okay, they actually did something about it. That's cool. And then hopefully, as you find more ways to include parents in that strategic feedback cycle and in these steps, you'll see that the responses to this question, how often do you see your feedback to the school having an impact, will increase, because they will be active members and participants of that process. But the question about how we review and continue going forward is, how will you as an organization kind of adapt to new cohorts, to new parents, new pupils, new staff members, and keep people up to speed in the approaches that you've chosen, in what works and what doesn't, and think about, if there are changes happening in the organization, how will that impact the strategies that we've chosen? How will we monitor how these strategies are working as we go forward? And we'll have hopefully another poll going up now, taking into account these steps. At which step do you feel you or your organization most often get stuck? Is it in the setting goals? Is it in carrying out the survey, analyzing results, taking action, or review and continue? Action, review and continue. Yeah. And I think taking action is definitely one of the hardest ones, to keep that momentum going. Many times I think that the emotional response for you as people running the survey is, whew, okay, we got the responses, we feel good, we're done. The task is over. We can check it off the list. When in reality, it is taking action that just is the beginning of the process. You have the information that you needed. Now you have to do something with it. And that is really hard to connect from that. So that's where having that clear goal in mind, why you collected this information, what you plan to do with it, and making sure you did the planning ahead of time, that it's in your schedule to analyze the results, to make those action plans based on the results, can help you kind of bridge that lull in momentum that kind of comes up after the survey is closed. Okay, and finishing off, we have just a few minutes left. Where is parental engagement needed most? Kind of looking forward for you as organizations, as people working with parental engagement. Parental engagement is always evolving. What is a question that Kate had sent in before? How is parental engagement and the role of the trust developing? How can we do more to think about parental engagement on a bigger scale than it is day to day? So I'll kind of open the discussion back to you. Where would you like to see parental engagement develop in your organization? If you have any ideas now where you'd like to begin, please share them. And Iona, if there's anything in the chat, I'll let you kind of take the mic.
Yeah, I've been responding, and I was midway through typing a response there, but I'll actually we can talk about it. Yeah, one of the